Hey, if you like this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that noti bell because it really helps out. James Wan's The Conjuring 2013 stands tall as one of the most chilling and artfully crafted horror films of the 21st century, reawakening a genre that had for years been bogged down by formulaic jump scares and uninspired gore. What makes The Conjuring a modern horror masterpiece isn't merely its scares, though there are many and masterfully executed, but its entire atmospheric construction anchored in real-world mythology and characters who are hauntingly human. From the very first frames, which showcase the infamous Annabelle doll, the film plunges viewers into an unsettling universe where the supernatural creeps through the mundane. One brings a precise and cinematic eye to the haunting of the parent family, creating tension not by overloading the screen with monsters or violence, but by drawing out suspense and letting silence speak louder than the screams. The haunted farmhouse, with its creaking wood and shadowy corners, becomes a character in its own right, and every door that opens by itself and every knock in the dead of night is elevated to unbearable dread through skillful direction and impeccable sound design. The film's use of practical effects, long takes, and a classical visual style harkens back to horror legends like The Exorcist and the Amityville Horror, all while interjecting it with a distinctly modern pacing and polish that makes this story feel fresh and unrelenting in its horror. Yet what elevates The Conjuring far beyond most of its genre peers is its core humanity, centered around the deeply grounded and emotionally resonant characters of Ed and Lorraine Warren, portrayed with sincerity and gravitas by Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga. Their genuine love and unwavering dedication to faith, to each other, and to helping the tormented offer an emotional anchor in a genre so often lacking in depth. They are not cynical ghost hunters chasing fame, but a devout couple risking everything to confront evil in its most visceral form. The grounded approach, combining with the realistic portrayal of the parents' family fear and desperation, allows the audience to empathize deeply with their plight, making each supernatural occurrence more horrifying because of what's at stake. One never loses sight of the emotional and psychological cost of possession and paranormal torment. He reminds us that horror doesn't always wear the face of a monster. Sometimes it's the fear of losing one's family, mind, or faith. It's this rare blend of technical excellence, narrative tension, emotional weight, and respect for its real-world inspirations that makes The Conjuring not just a great horror movie, but a defining cinematic event. One that rekindled mainstream appreciation for classic supernatural horror and launched a brilliantly successful, sprawling cinematic universe rooted in the real and in the terrifying. James Wan's legacy as one of horror's most visionary directors was cemented long before The Conjuring was even a forethought, but his trajectory from the indie auteur to genre powerhouse is a masterclass in understanding fear, tension, and storytelling. His debut with Saw in 2004 wasn't just a surprise hit, it was a cultural moment that reinvigorated the psychological thriller space with an unforgiving, twist-laden narrative and a claustrophobic aesthetic that echoed through countless imitators. Made on a shoestring budget, especially considering it was a horror film and those are more expensive than you'd believe, Saw didn't rely on big-name stars or flashy effects. Instead, Wan built a slow-burning sense of dread, culminating in one of horror's most jaw-dropping twists, proof that a tight script, eerie atmosphere, and meticulous direction could outshine even the most expensive studio productions. He wasn't content just to scare audiences, he wanted to unsettle them on a deeper level. One's early grasp on how to make viewers squirm, not just from gore but from anticipation, showed that he understood the language of fear, silence, shadows, timing, and human desperation. But it wasn't until Wan began his foray into the supernatural with Insidious in 2010 that his signature style truly came into its own. With that film, he showcased his ability to orchestrate long, silent scenes punctuated by explosive frights. What some might call quiet terror, other directors who leaned into horror cliches, Wan used them with surgical precision, never overplaying his hand. Instead of simply throwing ghosts at the screen, he gave them space to breathe and linger, making them feel more intrusive and invasive. He played with our expectations, building tension slowly and then unsettling it with jaw-clenching force. The balancing act between restraint and chaos became a cornerstone of Wan's directorial approach. When he finally returned with The Conjuring, it was clear he had evolved far from the original Saw. It was clear he had evolved, No longer interested in just blood or shock, Wan crafted a film steeped in emotional depth and dread, taking inspiration from classic horror greats while injecting his own flair for storytelling and intensity. His command over the camera, his use of long takes, his precise control of silence and sound, and his unwavering attention to pacing made the original Conjuring not just scary, but truly cinematic. Then came The Conjuring 2, arguably his horror magnum opus. Here, Wan took everything he had learned from Saw, Insidious, and the first Conjuring and refined it into a haunting that felt both grand and intimate. From the first nightmarish figure of the Crooked Man to the spine-chilling presence of the demon Valak, Wan wove layers of horror that never overshadowed the human story at its heart. The Warrens weren't just ghost hunters, they were emotional anchors amidst the chaos, and Wan ensured their journey through the haunted streets of Enfield, London was as much about love and faith as it was about battling evil. What makes The Conjuring 2 so brilliant is how Wan orchestrates fear like a symphony. Every creak of the floorboard, every flicker of light, every moment of stillness is designed with intention. It's not just about creating jump scares, it's about drawing the viewer so deep into the world that even a slow pan across a hallway can send shivers down the spine of the viewer. With The Conjuring 2, James Wan didn't just prove he was one of the best horror directors working today, he confirmed that he might be one of the most important voices in the genre's entire history. Someone who understands not just how to frighten an audience, but how to move them, disturb them, and above all, keep them coming back for more. What separates The Conjuring from the sea of forgettable horror films that litter the genre is James Wan's unparalleled ability to build dread rather than simply deliver scares. Many modern horror movies fall into the trap of chasing shock value, an endless barrage of loud noises, quick flashes, and grotesque images. But Wan understands something deeper. That real terror is not in the scare itself, but in the anticipation of it. He draws from the Hitchcockian philosophy that suspense lies not in the explosion, but in knowing the bomb is under the table. In The Conjuring, this is executed to perfection. Scenes stretch with uneasy stillness, where a character slowly opens a closet door, or camera lingers on an empty hallway just long enough for your heartbeat to catch up. The scares aren't loud, they are inevitable. They crawl into your subconscious, burrow deep, and stay there long after the credits roll. This isn't just filmmaking, it's psychological manipulation, and Wan is a maestro of that symphony of fear. Beyond the timing, Wan's use of space, architecture, and cinematography plays a pivotal role in amplifying that dread. He frames the Perrin family's farmhouse not just as a setting, but as a labyrinth of haunted possibility. Every room, hallway, and stairwell becomes a character, each one holding the potential for a supernatural encounter. Wan often uses wide-angle lenses and deep focus to allow the audience to scan the environment, inviting us to hunt for shadows, for movement, for signs of the otherworldly. In doing so, he doesn't just make us observers, he makes us participants in the fear and in the dread. The use of long takes and fluid tracking shots allows scenes to breathe and evolve in real time, without the crutch of quick cuts or flashy editing. It's immersive horror. Viewers are not just watching someone be haunted, they are being haunted themselves. The camera's slow pans and glides, often lingering just long enough to make us question what we're seeing, creates a living, breathing world, where the supernatural doesn't interrupt the mundane, it infests it. Wan's decision to largely use practical effects rather than over-relying on CGI also contributes to the film's authenticity and raw terror. The ghosts, demons, and possessions feel tangible, whether it's the clapping hands from the darkness, the eerie levitation of Carol and Perrin, or the demon's terrifying reveal. Every scare feels grounded in the real world. This commitment to physicality elevates the horror from mere spectacle to something tactile, something you feel in your bones. It's horror with texture, weight, and presence. And combined with a masterfully chilling sound design that knows when to go silent and when to strike like a lightning bolt, Wan crafts a sonic and visual experience that fully immerses the viewer. The dread doesn't let up, because it never truly arrives all at once. It grows, festers, and evolves over time, making each scene more frightening than the last. This slow boil style of horror is not only a rarity in modern filmmaking, but a testament to Wan's trust in his audience's intelligence and emotional vulnerability. He does not spoon-feed the fear, he lets it infect you naturally. What elevates The Conjuring far beyond the typical haunted house horror is not just its expertly crafted scares or spine-tingling atmosphere, but its unshakable emotional core. James Wan, with screenwriters Chad and Carrie Hayes, understood that horror at its best is not about the ghosts, it is about the people that are being haunted. At the center of the story is the Perrin family, a believable, loving and struggling unit who feel genuinely lived in and real. They are not throwaway victims. They're a mother and father trying to provide for their children, 5 daughters with distinct personalities, and a household slowly succumbing to invisible forces. We see their laughter, their financial hardship, and their familial warmth before we ever see anything supernatural. That human foundation is what makes their descent into terror so devastating. The scares work because we have grown to care for them. Every time Carolyn Perrin is thrown across a room, or one of the girls wakes up screaming, it hits harder than it would in any other horror film because the audience has been made to feel like part of the family. One isn't just scaring you, he's putting people you empathize with through hell, and that is a rare kind of horror nowadays. But perhaps the most emotionally powerful aspect of The Conjuring lies in its portrayal of Ed and Lorraine Warren. These are not cynical, paranormal investigators or caricatures of religious dogma. They are deeply loving, God-fearing people whose strength comes not from arrogance or bravado, but from their unwavering belief in good and in each other. Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga breathe soul into these roles in ways no other actors or actresses could ever. They're not in it for the fame or for the money, they're in it because they have to help, and that emotional investment is what makes the climactic exorcism scene so harrowing and yet also so cathartic. The stakes aren't just spiritual, they're literally human. You're not rooting for a priest to expel a demon, you're rooting for a mother to return to her children, for a husband to save his wife, for faith to overpower fear. It's beautiful, haunting, and so rare in the genre that often trades empathy for body counts. What James Wan does here, and what so few other horror directors have even tried to attempt, is create a horror film that is ultimately about love. It sounds paradoxical, but it's true. The Conjuring is terrifying because it cares so deeply about its characters. That underlying emotional weight makes every supernatural encounter more intense, more terrifying, and more meaningful. The horror isn't just happening, it's happening to people who matter. And when you care about those people, you're not just scared for them, you're scared right alongside them. That connection transforms the viewing experience from a passive one into something far more visceral and unforgettable. It's what turns a haunted house movie into something timeless. In Wan's hands, horror becomes a vessel not just for fear, but for humanity, and that is what makes The Conjuring not just a great horror film, but a truly great film in every sense of the word. One of the most important yet often overlooked elements that sets The Conjuring apart as a modern horror masterpiece is the strength and sincerity of its performances. Horror films, especially nowadays, are notoriously difficult arenas for actors, often reduced to screaming, crying and reacting to thin air or CGI placeholders. Yet in The Conjuring, the performances are not only believable, they are magnetic. At the core of the film's emotional gravity are Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga as the aforementioned Ed and Lorraine Warren. These roles could have easily slipped into camp or exaggeration, but both actors bring an astounding sense of dignity, intelligence, and spiritual weight to these characters. Wilson exudes a calm resolve and empathy, playing Ed as a man deeply burdened by the darkness he confronts, yet unflinching in his purpose. Farmiga, on the other hand, delivers one of the most quiet yet powerful performances in horror history. Lorraine is intuitive, fragile, deeply compassionate, and haunted in ways far beyond ghosts. Her expressive eyes and soft-spoken demeanor masks a well of strength, and every time she walks into a room or senses something unseen, we believe her because she believes. The Warrens aren't caricatures of paranormal investigators, they are anchors of empathy and authenticity. Then there's Lily Taylor, who gives a performance as Carolyn Perrin that is nothing short of devastating. Horror doesn't often recognize maternal suffering beyond the cliché, but Taylor's portrayal is grounded in palpable realism. She isn't just a scared mother, she's a woman unraveling physically and emotionally at the hands of a force she can't even begin to comprehend. When the demonic possessions begin to manifest, Taylor commits fully, not just to the fear and pain, but to the internal turmoil of a mother trying desperately to hold her family together as she herself falls apart. It's a performance layered with nuance, moments of tenderness, desperation and sheer terror that few other actors could deliver so convincingly in a genre context. Her possession scenes, particularly during the exorcism sequence towards the end of the film, are not merely horrifying, they're tragic. Watching her resist the force controlling her body, even as she begs not to harm her children, is emotionally crushing. It's a masterclass in making the supernatural feel painfully, frighteningly real. Supporting performances from Ron Livingston and the young actresses playing the Perrin daughters further enrich the emotional fabric of this film. Livingston, as Roger Perrin, brings a quiet strength and helplessness that reinforces the realism of a father unable to protect his family from something intangible. And the girls, each with her own personality, innocence and vulnerability, never feels like props or set dressing for ghostly antics. They're human, expressive and integral to the emotional stakes. Wan ensures that even the smallest child has moments that resonate. A glance, a cry, a stifled breath, all add to the mosaic of tension and heartache that defines this beautiful horror masterpiece. In a genre so frequently driven by the spectacle of fear, this film reminds us that it is the performances, the human truth in the face of the unexplainable, that make the fear believable. And when horror feels real, it leaves a mark that no visual effect or jump scare could ever hope to. The Conjuring is more than just a modern horror film. It's a towering achievement that redefined what the genre could be in the 21st century. At a time when horror was oversaturated with gorefests and cheap jump scares, James Wan managed to deliver a film rooted in patience, craftsmanship, and emotional resonance. Every frame of The Conjuring is infused with purpose, from its creeping camera work and suffocating atmosphere to its deliberate sound design and unnerving quiet moments. Wan understood that true horror comes not only from what goes bump in the night, but from the vulnerability of people, the fragility of family, and the hope that love and faith can overcome even the darkest pits of hell. That emotional grounding is what makes The Conjuring a masterpiece. It doesn't just scare you, it connects with you on a personal level. Over a decade since its release, The Conjuring will still stand and continue to stand as one of the defining horror films of its era. Not just because it terrified millions, but because it reminded audiences and filmmakers alike that horror can have heart, weight, and meaning as well. It can be spiritual without being preachy, frightening without being hollow, and emotionally rich without ever losing its scare factor. It sparked an entire cinematic universe, launched a new appreciation for slow burn supernatural storytelling, and proved that horror done right can be as artistically significant as any drama or thriller.